Right now, as the conflict with Iran unfolds, the United States is trading a $4 million interceptor missile to destroy a $35,000 drone. This is not strategy. It is catastrophic math playing out in real time. In just 5 days, Iran has achieved what no power has ever managed in modern history. Not Russia, not China, not the Soviet Union at its peak. In 120 hours, they have methodically dismantled half of the entire US Patriot missile defense network across the Middle East, exposing a fatal systemic vulnerability. In this analysis, we will break down the precise production bottlenecks and asymmetric costs that are dismantling the global order you've built for. But this outcome was not a surprise. The warning, the exact math, was laid out years ago by some of the most prominent minds in engineering and strategy. The question is, why was it ignored? It was ignored because the math, while simple, was catastrophic. And to acknowledge it was to admit the entire structure of American military power had a fatal mathematical flaw. The crisis unfolding was never about a lack of superior technology. It is a fundamental, catastrophic mismatch in production arithmetic. Iran's strategy was built to exploit this imbalance, pitting low-cost, mass-produced weapons against America's exquisite, expensive, and slow-to-replace defense systems. Consider the numbers. A single Iranian Shahed drone is estimated to cost around $35,000. The PAC-3 interceptor missile used to shoot it down costs an estimated $4 million. That is a cost exchange ratio of 150:1. For every dollar of force projected by the adversary, it costs the United States $114 to negate it. This is not a sustainable model of warfare. It is economic exhaustion by design. But cost is only the first layer of the problem. The core issue is the physical reality of the US industrial base. Official data shows the annual production of the crucial THAAD interceptor is just 96 units per year. Let that number settle. 96. In the first week of the conflict, Iran's strategy forced the United States to expend roughly 150 of them. In 7 days, nearly 2 years of critical production were erased from the inventory. When defense contractors were given emergency orders to quadruple production, they confirmed the ramp-up would require 7 years to reach full capacity. 7 years. You cannot fight a 7-month war with a 7-year replacement timeline. The math produces one outcome. This is not a fringe analysis. It's a truth that has been stated plainly at the highest levels. Tech industrialist Elon Musk warned, quote, "American weapons programs need to be completely redone. The current strategy is to build a small number of weapons at a high price to fight yesterday's war. Unless there are immediate and dramatic changes made, America will lose the next war very badly." His diagnosis was precise. A strategy of building small numbers of exquisite weapons guarantees defeat against mass-produced threats. And it goes deeper. This exact scenario, this precise attrition model, was predicted for years by figures like former UN weapons inspector and US Army intelligence officer Scott Ritter. His reward for presenting the unvarnished math was to be targeted and deplatformed. It reveals a systemic feature, not a bug. The system actively silences the analysts who read the numbers out loud because the numbers prove the system is strategically bankrupt. The numbers are brutal. For you, what's the most alarming part of this attrition math? The multi-year replacement timeline? Or the 100-to-1 cost disparity? Let me know below. Type timeline or cost. The math is not complicated. It is, however, catastrophic. It raises the obvious question. If the strategic position is this unsustainable, why not simply de-escalate? Why not walk away from the table? Because the events of the last 120 hours were not just about destroying military hardware, they were about destroying the off-ramps. The option to simply stop no longer exists. That option was vaporized on February 28, 2026, by a single catastrophic miscalculation. The conventional wisdom in Western military doctrine is that decapitation strikes are effective. The assumption is that removing the head paralyzes the body. The United States and Israel operated on this assumption when they killed Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei. They were wrong. What they did was remove the only central authority capable of restraining the Iranian military. Think of it like a train hurtling down the tracks. The assassination wasn't like destroying the engine. It was like killing the one engineer who knew where the brakes were, while 31 other conductors instantly took autonomous control of their own carriages, each with their own preset orders to attack. As confirmed by reports from Bloomberg and Reuters throughout March, subsequent diplomatic efforts from China, Russia, and Europe all failed for a simple reason. There was no one left to negotiate with. America didn't just escalate, it destroyed the only path to de-escalation. It burned the off-ramp. With that off-ramp gone, the catastrophic depletion math we just established is now locked in. There is no longer a political mechanism to halt the weekly consumption of 150 interceptors against a domestic production of 2. The countdown is now irreversible, and this is not simply a geopolitical analysis. It is a financial event. The consequences are arriving directly in your bank account, at the gas pump, and in your portfolio. The bill for this strategic failure is coming due. Next, we will calculate the price that you are about to pay. The calculation begins with the global oil market. The strikes on February 28th have severely disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, the artery for 1/5 of the world's energy supply. The market reaction was immediate. Brent crude surged past $81 a barrel. Now, analysts project a sustained price of $100 to $150 a barrel if these disruptions persist. Let's translate this macro shock into your personal finances. A sustained $150 oil price is not an abstract headline. For a typical family in the US or the UK, the math produces one outcome: between $3,000 and $4,000 in additional angel costs. And that figure is not just at the gas pump. It is an inflationary tax levied across the entire supply chain. You will see it in your grocery bills as transportation costs for food go up. You will see it on the price tags of consumer goods, which require energy to manufacture and ship. It is a systemic bleed. This price shock does more than drain your account. It transfers immense geopolitical leverage to energy-producing nations. We are already seeing Russia use Europe's energy vulnerability, now exacerbated by this conflict, to press for concessions regarding its position in Ukraine. This $3,000 to $4,000 cost is a painful but predictable first-order effect. However, to focus only on this number is to fundamentally misunderstand the situation. This financial pressure is merely a symptom of a much deeper structural failure. The real vulnerability, the terminal diagnosis for the current order, is not found in the price of a barrel of oil. It is found by looking at who benefits most from a West that is economically drained and militarily overextended. That benefit is being calculated today not in Tehran, but in Beijing. The economic shock from the Strait of Hormuz is only the first-order effect. The true terminal consequence of this conflict is the massive strategic vulnerability it has just created in the Indo-Pacific. Let's be precise. The United States is burning through its most advanced and finite munitions to counter the Iranian saturation attack. We are talking about THAAD interceptors, Patriot PAC-3s, and Tomahawk cruise missiles. The math is simple. These are the exact same weapon systems that form the backbone of deterrence against China in a potential Taiwan conflict. They are not interchangeable. Because of a deindustrialized base, the production timeline to replenish these stockpiles is, on average, 7 years. The result is a multi-year readiness gap. As National Defense magazine reported in its March 2026 issue, this conflict has exposed catastrophic weaknesses in our magazine depth and munitions inventory, crippling the ability to sustain two major conflicts. The Center for a New American Security confirms these platforms are indispensable in a war with China. This depletion wave in one theater has compressed the deterrence timeline in another. For the next 3 to 5 years, America's capacity to sustain a high-intensity fight in Asia is severely compromised. This is not speculation, it is an industrial reality. As Politico has detailed, America's Asian allies are already expressing fear that US stockpiles are exhausted. A perception that dangerously emboldens strategic calculations in Beijing. For investors, this 3 to 5 year readiness gap creates a specific, non-negotiable window of heightened risk for any portfolio exposed to Asian supply chains. That means nearly everyone, starting with semiconductors, but a structural break of this magnitude is not just a story of decline. It is also a story of reconstruction. The erosion of the old security architecture necessitates the construction of a new one. This forced modernization, funded by necessity, represents the single largest capital reallocation of our lifetime. The critical question is no longer if the system will change, but where the capital must flow to rebuild it. That question, where the capital must flow, is not theoretical. It is the foundation of the most significant investment thesis for the coming decade. Everything we have discussed, the catastrophic production math, the diplomatic dead end, the global shockwave, is not simply a story of decline. It is the catalyst. It has triggered an inevitable, policy-driven industrial rebuild that will dwarf other market trends. This is the ultimate portfolio protection play. You have seen the structural risk. Here is the predictable, policy-backed opportunity to hedge against it and profit from the only possible solution. The logic follows a clear path. First, the undeniable reality of this failure forces a massive US policy shift. The Pentagon is now compelled to offer long-term, multi-year procurement contracts to rebuild its hollowed-out stockpiles. This provides stable, predictable revenue for the defense sector. The numbers are already in motion. Lockheed Martin has secured a 7-year agreement to triple PAC-3 production and quadruple THAAD production to 400 units per year. The math produces one outcome: guaranteed, decades-long tailwinds for major US defense primes like Lockheed and RTX. Second, the crisis exposed the fatal weakness of relying on foreign supply chains for the materials of war. Consequently, Washington is now fast-tracking initiatives for the domestic mining, processing, and recycling of critical minerals. This is not a future hope, it is current policy. On March 4th, 2026, the Pentagon requested proposals from over 100 industry members to build domestic capacity for 13 critical minerals, including nickel, graphite, and tungsten. Capital is being directed into this sector by government mandate. Third, these first two pillars create a powerful downstream effect for onshoring suppliers. Rebuilding a domestic defense and semiconductor manufacturing base requires an entire ecosystem of support industries. The momentum is now firmly behind rebuilding this capacity inside the United States. This reframes the entire shock into an actionable framework, targeted allocation to US defense primes, critical minerals miners, and on-shored suppliers, delivers both portfolio alpha and legacy protection. It is a direct strategy to front-run the inevitable industrial base rebuild. Understanding these second-order effects before the market prices them in is how you protect and grow wealth in a volatile world. If this is the kind of analysis you need to navigate what's coming, make sure you are subscribed.